Hello and welcome to another episode of the Magic Arena Run. Today we're going to finally dissect the Legion of Dusk deck, see how we can improve it considering the current meta in Magic Arena. So, as you've noted in competitive constructive, we tend to run into two kinds of decks. They're either the super fast aggro, generally mono red, can also be red black. You can also run into the other extreme, which is a super control deck. They're generally white blue, can sometimes be blue black. A way to differentiate them is that one deck plays out all its action in the early game. You will expect drops on the first three turns, expect them, and they expect to win very quickly then on. So whatever they play, we have to have something on the board early. But on the other extreme, we have decks that are willing to take damage quite early. They're able to answer your threats generally middle to late, and they're able to survive long enough, get control so that they can finally play out their big guns. So looking over doing a quick look over in the deck, we're going to, I suppose we're gonna edit this one. I probably should copy this, but oh well, let's just edit this deck altogether. So I think it's better I just make a copy of this one. So we're gonna finally revise this as version 3.0. So first off, we're going to drop the token producers. So that's one copy of Call to the Feast, 3 copies of Queen's Commission. We're not dropping them off completely, but we're dropping them early enough because they produce a lot of 1/1 bodies, super vulnerable to the early meta. If you run into an early aggro, it's basically asking to be wiped clean by a Goblin Chain Whirler. Sure, we could be able to play a Legion Lieutenant to buff them, but these guys are generally removal magnets. That's why we have 4 of them. So we take those guys out. Our Sky Marcher aspirants and our Vicious Conquistadors, I think we can move some of these to the sideboard. So our sideboard has to be a bit more transformational. But the important key now is that we have to have a lot of early action. So we're looking at basically 2 drops, mostly 2 drops in this case. We're probably going to be looking into a few 5 drops, but that will probably also end up in the sideboard as well. So right off the bat, Bishop Soldier, very plain, 2 to cast 2/2 lifelink. I know there are better ones here. Bloodcraze Paladin. It has flash, so what it does is it comes in with for each creature that died this turn, you can play it out. Generally, the problem is you're not exactly holding up mana in the early game against aggro, so sometimes the opponent can wipe the board and you're not able to take advantage. So that one's a little bit risky. I might consider it though. Adanto Vanguard, also quite resilient, but if you're paying for life to keep this guy around, it's a bit questionable considering that the aggro deck is willing to just throw direct damage spells into right at the face. So wait, we are set for standard. Why is there a Falcon Rod Reaver here? Oh, it's from the welcome deck. That's why. Famished Paladin. We could play this guy out, but we don't have that much life gain anymore now that we dropped most of the tokens. So it's a shame. It's a 3/3. It would have been perfect. So Martyr of Dusk. This is the one card that we took out that we will put back in. Sure, it dies to a Goblin Chain Whirler, but it does return. But it does pay off something in return. So we'll actually bump up to 3 of these for now. Let's take a look. Oathsworn Vampire again. Not much life gain, so this is resilient, but we're not guaranteed to gain a lot of life. Paladin of Atonement. If you lost life last turn, put a 1. Interesting, very vulnerable. So no, Queen's Bay Soldier is just a 2 mana 2/2, I would rather have the the bishop soldier instead. Let's see, got a few more entries to go over. Skyblade of the Legion, 1/3 flyer. This will hold the fort. It's not super strong, and it will still die to a 2 mana removal spell like a Braid or Lightning Strike. So something to think about. I'm thinking Martyr of Dusk is the best because even if it dies off, it still brings back something. Nope, Vraska's Conquistadors. Yeah, this is from the welcome deck. No, not welcome deck. This is from the Planeswalker deck. Oh yeah, we did miss out on one copy of Yahini. Didn't notice that this guy's actually a vampire also. So what happens is, if we're able to kill our opponent's creatures, Yahini bumps up, and we can sacrifice it to keep it alive. So basically, another resilient threat forces our opponent to have exile type removal. So we will put one copy of him in. So yep, we buffed up more of our 2-drops. I want to move the Sky Marchers to this sideboard. These guys fit perfectly on a control matchup because you can drop them early. They will eventually gain some sort of evasion. So these guys are more perfect there. Vicious Conquistadors are, I wouldn't say they're better, but they do have a bigger butt. So at the very least, they have to eat a dedicated burn spell, not just a Goblin Chain Whirler. So I still don't like the idea of putting 2 and 2 right now. I'm gonna drop the 2 copies of Duress from the sideboard. These never worked out. Fumigate's also gonna go. We're not really gonna be playing on that plan. So I'm going to, if I were to move one, yeah, I'd move the Sky Marcher. So bump that up, bump this guy down. I'm willing to bump up the Sky Marchers by 1. Bump up the Vicious Conquistadors by 1. Gifted Aetherborn definitely should be a 4 of, so I will put 3 copies of Gifted Aetherborn on the main and keep 1 on the side. So now let's take a look at the, so we do have 1 more slot for here. I think we put in 1 more cast out. Okay, now let's take a look at the removal spell, see which ones worked out. Seal Away, not so much. Sure, it's enchantment style removal, but this is the weird case where we want our, it sometimes works, but I think I would rather have a cast down instead in this slot. I know it's kind of weird, they both seem to do the same thing, but in practice, actually, cast down or Vraska's Contempt. Vraska's Contempt will also fit in here. It will also count as our Planeswalker removal. Yeah, so we kind of cheaped out on the removal. So I'm gonna drop the Seal Aways for Vraska's Contempt. It's now kind of mandatory at this point. Alternatively, we could just go with so we do have a bunch of 4-drops. The Fatal Push is kind of okay. Okay, so but not exactly something I want to run. Okay, so we have to note that we have a lot of our removals forecast. At least cast outs we can cycle, but we have 1 copy of Ixalan's Binding Tree. So we have 5. So all our removals in the 4 slot. So we actually wait. No, there's a better option. Not Vraska. Vicious Offering. Yeah, this is a better fit here. Okay, it won't answer Planeswalkers that much, but we don't necessarily have to answer them directly. We still have Binding, we still have Cast Out. What we do need is, we have to note that a lot of we have a lot of creatures that they're pretty much gonna die at one point or another. Having a Vicious Offering, something that we can upgrade as a higher end removal, This one actually kind of works better than Fatal Push, even though Fatal Push is cheaper. So I'm gonna keep two copies 2 and 2. The Fatal Push, I'm going to no these guys I'm more willing to keep because these guys fit perfectly in aggro, but so do the Vicious Offering. So I'll keep these guys here also. Yeah, I guess that looks about right. I still want to fit in cast downs as well, but we have to note that we're a bit more flexible because a lot of our creatures will tend to trade in combat unless our opponent has a very nice sweep. So if we know something's gonna trade, like let's say a token and whatnot, having minus power, minus toughness is a way to win combat in a sense. So it's not necessarily straight up removal. It can sort of segue into a combat trick. So that said, we need to that answers pretty much the early game. Now we need to answer the late game part. So we're going to go back to search for vampires. One thing we learned that was very important from the mirror matchup in our very first video is that we did not have much in the way of a late game. Sure, we could draw into our Arch of Araska that would draw some cards, but otherwise we a lot of the times we were dependent on working off the top of the deck. So we don't need to have a lot of 5-drops. In fact, 1 copy is enough. Forerunner of the Legion can serve as virtual copies when we actually need them. Vona did quite some good work, so we're gonna take a look at some of the stuff we can remove. I'm gonna reduce the number of castouts back to 1. I'm gonna drop the Forsake the Worthy to 2, so that kind of gives us 2 slots. I'm actually willing to drop Excellence Binding down to 1 also. So let's take a look at our 5-drops. So not an Anointed Deacon basically just gives a vampire +2/+0, not so much. We want something that can help us stay in the long term. Arvad the Curse is more for legendaries. We don't have that many. That touch lifelink is okay. Bishop of Rebirth is one consideration. Basically, even all it has to do is just attack. It's a good way to get back a Legion's Lieutenant that's died. Good way to get back a Maverin Fane. Good way to get back, or better yet, good way to get back another Forerunner. And it also triggers Forerunners as well, so that's actually a good bonus. I'll consider 1 copy at least. Sideboard. Bishop of the Bloodstained. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 1 life for each vampire you control. Nope, that's what Sanctum Seeker is for, and that one does a better job. Champion of Dusk. This one's card draw. I don't want to put him in just yet. Deathless Ancient, 6 mana, way too expensive. And it just returns it back to hand. Not a fan. Exultant Sky Marcher, 2/3 flyer, nope. Glorifier of Dusk. You have to pay 2 life every time to activate either of the abilities. No, I'd rather just have Serra Angel. Grim Tactics call. Kazarov Sinjir Pureblood. Splash red for this ability. No, it costs 7. You have to note we can't rely so much on the life gain. Queen's Agent, no, it's just 3/3 lifelink that has Explore. Not so great. Sinjir Vampire, that's a classic. We have this one. Twilight Prophet. This one actually counts as card advantage. It is a 2/4 flyer. It's not as bomby as as the other champion, but that champion's kind of like a really large Dusk Legion Zealot. Sometimes, and if your board is really bad, sometimes you just draw 1 card. I'm game for a Twilight Prophet actually. That one would fit well. It's continuous card draw in a sense. Vampire Champion, Death Touch, cool. Vampire Revenant. Oh, that's a 3/1 flyer. Vampire Sovereign. When target opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life. This one is... Oh, something to look forward to. That's coming from the core set. So, I guess those two... I guess what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put back the one Forsake the Worldly. It did some good work. Alternately, you can cycle the cast outs anyway. Let's just put in another cast out again. So we have that option. So that consideration. Now let's take a look at the mana base. Now the deserts, we will sometimes get multiple activations, but I guess this is the case that we need to have the mana untapped. We barely cycle these. I would much rather have just multiple copies of Shafet and Ifnir instead. So Glorified is a black one, so we're going to drop that in favor of another Ifnir Deadlands. Desert of the True is the white one. I'm going to drop those two in favor of one Shafet Dunes. This is 24 lands. We're aiming... we might be able to get away with just 24. No, pushing it. Actually, this is the case. We're gonna put in the second Arch of Araska now. This is the case where because of the color combination, and now that we drop the cycling lands, this is what we really want. And we need to consider card draw in the long term. As it is, our card draw is only from Dusk Legion Zealots. The Arch Forerunners serves as a filtering. At least it gives us something we want. And that's about it. And oh yeah, and the Twilight Prophet in our sideboard. I guess we can try to find a way to fit in a 4/4 runner. Let's take a look at the analysis. Right now this is just a copy. Yep, we're not saving these changes. Okay, we're now mostly black. At least that's a consideration, because now we can adjust the mana appropriately. So we're gonna drop the plains to 6. We're gonna up the swamps to 9. The Shafet Dunes, we barely activate this, so we're gonna drop this down to 1. If near Deadlands a 3. What does the Black Memorial do? Does it buy back something from the graveyard? Memorial to Folly. Return target creature from your graveyard. Okay, we'll put in 1 copy of that. Because we do get a lot of creatures that die, so that is one way to get around it. It is a come into play tap land, so but it's one way around it. So let's reanalyze. Now that we're mostly black, yeah, this is a much better mana distribution now. So we're heavy on the number 2 slot. In fact, if you're not too convinced about the vampire game, I wouldn't say not too convinced about the vampire game, the desert gameplay. One trick you can do is we can sub some of these deserts, but there are only 3 of them now. We could sub some of these with probably the Memorial to Folly. But this is a better fit now. Yeah, so this is how we would run it as Legion of Dusk version 3.0. This is pretty much the final fit for this, how I would run it. There was some discussion back and forth about how the deck should be built. I've seen some lists that basically went all in on the tokens plan, 4 copies Queen's Commission, 4 copies Call to the Feast. But those deck lists predated Pro Tour Dominaria and definitely don't fit the meta in Magic Arena now. So I guess this is the deck. This is gonna be quite interesting. Again, there are many ways to improve on this deck. you probably noticed I've never tried to shoehorn Karn in here. If you have ways to get, if you can spend the mythic rare slots to fit in Karn, certainly be my guest. You could probably cut down on the Martyr of Dusk or make the Sanctum Seeker a one-off since you can shooter it anyway. Vicious Conquistadors can be a quick dump also. But this is the deck. It's again quite it again does pretty well in my opinion. I wouldn't say it's super perfect for the meta, but it does hold its own. It's not a fatal pushover, so to speak. Anyway, so that's it for the post-mortem of the Legion of Dusk. Hope you enjoyed this series. If you like what you see, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Next up, we're probably gonna take a look at. Actually, no. Next up, we're gonna take a look at the Golgari Exploration deck. I've seen an interesting version of it, so we're gonna tweak it up to accommodate Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, and we're gonna take it out for a spin. It's actually quite nice. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much, and hope to see you guys again next time.